You're listening to Barbell Logic,
the podcast where we talk about what it means to experience strength
and how you can use simple, hard, and effective strategies in training and nutrition to improve your life.
It starts with meeting you where you are right now and finding lasting solutions.
Welcome to the show.
Hello, everybody. Hello. Happy Tuesday. Welcome to Barbell Logic. I'm your host, Nikki Sims. With me is Andrew Jackson. What's up, Andrew?
Doing well.
Excellent.
How are you?
I'm really good. The sun is out. Finally, the best. Life is so much better with sun. It's a simple thing, but man, does it make a difference.
School is starting to get out. Claire just had her last day of school yesterday, which is good timing with the weather as well.
Yes. Yeah. I imagine there are going to be a lot more people doing outside things, lots of vacations coming up. Love to see that.
Yep. Definitely getting a lot of communication from clients about being out of the gym or being in strange gyms for the next 2-3 months. So
yes,
it's been programming fun. Lots of, hey, can you give me this for the next few weeks? And then not doing it.
Yeah, I'd say the small majority of people who ask for hotel workouts actually do them, which I'm very jazzed about. But that's kind of a good lead into what we're going to talk about today, because I wanted to talk about accessories. And I think part of what makes someone not really keen on doing hotel workouts, in addition to maybe the complexities of just like travel logistics, is if you don't really believe in doing accessories, why would you do them when you're on vacation? Like that's what a lot of the hotel workouts are, is like bicep curls and push-ups and bodyweight stuff and goblet squats. So I thought it'd be interesting to talk about, even in the presence of Barbell Week program, what kind of accessories you found have been entering into your wheelhouse lately, and how you strategize that, and why you pick some over others, because there are so many. And you even had a client ask you a question who I'm just going to parrot and be like, Andrew, don't you only program the big 4 lifts?
Yeah, I don't think the issue is that people believe or don't believe in accessories. At least that hasn't been my experience for myself.
I believe in accessories.
It's more that there is, I think, less of a clear mission or purpose for the accessories. People know they need to do them to get work done, and because they want it to support growing muscle or getting their lifts to be bigger, lift more weight. But I think there's a gap between the barbell and heavy compound movements that are inherently easy to focus on, in a sense, because they're so hard and so heavy. You're doing everything you can to move the weight and stay in balance. And I actually think the balance component and the skill aspect of completing a compound movement builds in a level of difficulty and focus that's required in order to execute the lift that you don't have on most accessories.
Yeah.
That's true for some of the bodyweight lifts, where I do think the reason people tend to be able to get into things like chin-ups or dips is because there's a little bit more of that feeling that I really need to put everything into it. But when you start getting into machines where stability is no longer part of the problem that you're trying to solve, or dumbbells where the load is relatively light, and if you go too light, you can kind of just flop your way through it without really getting anything meaningful out of it. So the first problem to solve, in my opinion, is to make sure that you as the coach and the client have a very clear reason and mission for those accessories, so that you can bring the right attention and focus and effort to the lifts. Because I would say problem number one is most people aren't making them hard enough.
Yeah. They still need to be in the hard but doable realm. But the way you get there, like you were saying, is different. We can't load you up on bicep curls like we would for a bench press. It's different. We need to access that hard somehow.
Yeah, the load does need to be hard enough that you're getting, and I actually push the accessories closer to failure, or I'm more willing to push even into failure more often, because the load is usually relatively light, and you're not getting as much systemic fatigue from doing a 45-pound dumbbell.
Right.
Even if you push yourself all the way to failure, the load is light and the amount of muscle mass you're using is relatively small. So I think if you push dumbbell curls to failure, you're getting a totally different stimulus and systemic stress than you are from squatting to failure with several hundred pounds or deadlifting to failure and grinding through a big range of motion. That's the other thing, is I think that the range of motion is relatively smaller for accessories. So mission number one, I guess, going back to my point there, is that I try to be crystal clear, both with myself and my clients, that accessories have to go just as hard, if not harder, in a sense, than the compound movements to ensure that the work is being productive. Like, the work has to be productive in order for it to have any meaning or value. If you're just flopping around, slanging your dumbbell curls around, and it's, maybe you get a little sweaty and winded from it. I mean, it's exercise, but it's probably not going to contribute to actually making your arms get any bigger.
Yeah. So there has to be the reasoning behind it. And usually the reasoning behind accessories is, like you said, making things bigger. Like you're trying to add more muscle mass in a way that the barbell lifts may not touch.
And that's another reason why I think it's important to push them to failure, because you'll be training some of the smaller muscle groups from the compounds, but not to failure, or not close enough to failure for them to actually drive hypertrophy in most cases. So a lot of accessories are usually shoulders, arms, biceps, triceps, forearms. It might be grip, could be
Glutes.
some of the bigger muscle groups that you want to train through a different range of motion. That can be another good reason for accessories, I think, are if you want to train the terminal end of your glute extension, hip thrusts effectively. It's kind of where I'm going there.
Right.
It's like you can overload certain range of motions differently with although I don't know if I would call that an accessory. That's more of a, what's the word I'm looking for?
Supplemental
Lift. Yeah. But take, for example, a lot of the arm work, I notice that adding muscle mass to your biceps and triceps in particular, and shoulders for that matter as well, greatly improves your bench press strength. So it's one of those things where eventually I think the bench press is not the optimal lift for training a specific muscle group. So you need accessories to be able to add more work or volume to certain muscle groups that just aren't being effectively trained, or at least not trained as specifically as you could with an accessory. And so again, you come back to why it's so important to be able to push all the way to failure, because as we've talked about in previous podcasts, mechanical tension is the primary driver for hypertrophy. And in order to get mechanical tension, you need to get pretty dang close to failure, like legitimately 1 or 2 reps.
Yeah.
Maybe 2 to 4 reps from failure at the furthest, which is really hard to know when you're flopping around at really light weights. I think that's the benefit of compound movements. And the challenge with accessories is figuring out how to pick loads and movement variations that you can actually tell whether you're getting legitimately close to failure. Not just because you got tired and
Right.
winded from doing 50 or 60 reps. I mean, you're basically doing a cardio workout at that point.
Yeah. I'm thinking of movements where you might see that. Like, something that comes to mind actually initially is a push-up. So if you have someone who is pretty good at bench press, they can bench press well over their body weight. Like, you need a lot of push-up reps for that to do things. And so for that to be a useful accessory, you probably have to go on there either already fatigued from bench press, or instead of doing push-ups, maybe you break that down into its parts and you do some pec flies, you do some tricep work, you do something that actually does isolate the muscle group, because push-ups someone may be too strong for push-ups to be useful. And then you have to actually isolate certain things. That's what comes to my mind when you say flopping around doing 50 reps.
Yeah. The nice thing about push-ups is that when you do fail, like,
Oh yeah. And it comes.
personally, I think I hit the wall. I mean, that one for me is probably somewhere in the 30 reps. But then what's also really interesting about push-ups as an example, and I think this is true with a lot of accessories, is that my ability to do sets across is, unless you're pre-fatigued going into the first set.
Right.
Like if you try to do 3 sets of max AMRAP legit failure push-ups, do you think you could do sets across at the same number of reps?
No, I have that in my program. Like, no, they're like chin-ups where it's like the last set is close to half of what the first set was.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But there's like a buy-in to stuff like that.
Yeah. But I think the body weight, that goes back to, I think the body weight accessories being closer in a sense to compound movements because they tend to be a little bit more compound. There's usually, I mean, you got the shoulder and the elbow in the push-up. Same with the dip. And then the chins, you've got the same shoulder and the elbow. Those are both like, almost as much of a compound movement as a bench press. When I think of the ones where it gets harder to really push to true failure is if you're doing some sort of true isolation, like single joint exercise with a light enough weight that you're having to go over like 20 or 30 reps. I would wager most people are not actually getting to true muscular failure. Some people are, but I think it's harder to do that. It's harder to tell the difference between whether I'm just like tired of doing this exercise or I actually failed.
I think of all the times that I've done drop sets for my accessories, and like those are huge sets, like 50, usually 40, 50, sometimes 60 reps. And you're done when you fail. And you could definitely get there because of the way you get there. But
how many people do you think have the ability to stay focused and actually push hard for 50 or 60 reps?
well, that's what I think is interesting about the drop set is there's some kind of incentive because you start with a weight that's heavy where you usually can get like 8 to 10 reps. And then you're just like, oh man, okay, I'm hitting failure. And then you reduce weight and you do more. So there's kind of like you get to reduce weight. So there's always like a sign of hope, except that it just feels more and more awful. Like the third set is just horrendous. But I have no idea how many people would be getting there. I'm not sure, but I think that's a clever way to get to failure and get a lot of reps done quickly.
Yeah, I mean, this might just be a point of disagreement. I just don't see the value of doing more reps. I honestly don't. If mechanical tension is the primary driver of hypertrophy and that's the goal, why do more reps than you need to? Would be my fundamental question.
Yeah.
Like, why do you need to do more than 12? Like, I see the value in doing a lighter weight. So if a lighter weight enables you, like with lateral raises, for example, I have no desire to do lateral raises with a weight that's so heavy that I could only do 4 reps. That sounds ridiculous.
Right.
Like some muscle groups are so small that you need a relatively light weight just to be able to do 3, 4, 5 reps with any kind of good movement quality. And in that case, then you have to do more reps because it's just, it's going to be a lighter weight. Sometimes that's true once you become strong enough for a body weight lift. If you're only going to do body weight for dips or chins, and like you have almost 20 chins, well, now you've got to do more reps to actually get to failure. But I don't see the point if you can load a machine or a barbell or a whatever dumbbell and you can do the movement with good quality. I personally have no desire, nor have I seen any good argument, unless you have some sort of a performance objective that requires a high number of reps, muscular endurance or, whatever. If that's your goal to be able to do 100 chin-ups or something like that, okay, well then you need to be able to develop the ability to do a lot of reps. But if your goal is simply to build more muscle, why do more reps than you would have to? Doesn't make any sense to me.
My thought there is if you can't get the tonnage from as many places as you might otherwise, meaning if you're limited in how much you can do in the heavy lifts based on like injury, then you have to find tonnage somewhere else somehow.
That might be where we just have a different mental model because I don't think tonnage is a meaningful metric or driver of hypertrophy.
Quantity, tonnage, or volume. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't. I see volume in terms of hard sets, like 5 sets to failure, regardless of the tonnage, is a better predictor of hypertrophy than accumulating tonnage, like just absolute tonnage. Because I can get you way more absolute tonnage with a silly amount of weight than probably you could doing a really heavy hard set, but I'm going to get you way more muscle mass with the hard sets than I am going to get you with a lot of tonnage and a silly amount of weight. Does that make sense?
Silly being light, on the lighter end of the.
Yeah.
I guess I don't have enough data except my own experience that what I've been doing has been working and I do a lot of reps. So,
Well, so I do think there's a element of what is the thing that you're motivated to do. So if you are and again, what you are bought into doing. So if you're bought into doing a lot of reps and you enjoy it and that keeps you showing up and doing it and you're pushing it effectively to failure, then I'd say it's productive. But I don't think it's because you're doing a lot of reps. I think you could get the same hypertrophy, same value in terms of hypertrophy from doing way less reps at a heavier weight. If also, asterisk, the limitations from whatever injury, that would be another huge reason, important reason, I think, to do similar to not being able to do lateral raises with a lot of weight. If you're limited in terms of the intensity you can do because of some sort of an injury or symptom, that would be, to me, a good reason to do a lighter weight because otherwise you wouldn't be able to do it.
right. Better than nothing kind of zone. Yeah.
That's just my mental model. And I'm not saying it has to be yours as well. It's just,
Yeah. Well, I like yours because then it's less time. Like I do also like, and when I program for people too, it's just like, I'm going to give you these reps. Whatever you do, if you need to even change the weight and you do fewer reps, make it hard. It's got to be typically more than 8 reps based on whatever variation I'm telling them to shoot for, but it's got to be hard.
Yeah.
Like, don't just mail it in here. This needs to be, something that by the end you're questioning whether you're going to be able to finish it or not. And I think that's what you and I can agree on. Is just like, you have to get to that point where you are challenged and you're not just like clanking the weights around.
one of the limitations of my mental model, which is influenced, I would say, by a combination of experience and literature that I've read, is that I would wager large sums of money that the number of humans on Earth that can do what you've described in terms of drop sets and doing 50, 60 reps, that is an extremely small percentage of the human population that can actually push themselves to true muscular failure in 50 reps. The vast majority, well, first off, the vast majority of people don't even show up and go to the gym. But even of those that do, you hit 20, 30 reps and they're like, yeah, I think I'm done. I think I'm tired.
Yeah.
But you are a unique individual that is able to push themselves into insane levels of work.
And when you have built muscle, like, at this rate, you and I have invested many years in muscle, like you're able to do something different in terms of like, someone who's been in the gym for 6 weeks, asking them to do a set of 30, I don't think is going to be nearly as effective as someone who's been training for a long time, asking them to do a set of 30. It's a different ballgame.
Yeah.
But to go back to maybe more of a mental model approach here for when it comes to accessories, like how do you select accessories for someone when they come to you with a goal? Or do you sometimes just decide, okay, now's the time for accessories? Or do you put them in from the beginning of working with someone?
I use the simple, hard, effective, and minimum effective dose kind of frameworks to decide when to add accessories. If I don't need to add accessories, I won't. And I would include in reasons to add accessories things like motivation. If somebody says that they want to work on their arms, I have no problem adding accessories in early. I don't think there's anything wrong with that, assuming they have the time to spare.
Yeah,
Time available is probably the biggest factor that I look at initially.
that is a big one. And equipment.
Yeah, exactly. So like, is it even feasible for you to do accessories either based on whatever constraints you have in terms of time or equipment? That's probably factor number one. Then I start thinking about what muscle group in particular am I trying to train? And I try to make it as complementary to the compound movements as I can for the most part. So as an example, I love dips. I love adding dips to my clients. Unfortunately, not everybody has a dip station. So that's why I end up having to cobble together a couple of different exercises, like maybe RDEs or LTEs, to get something somewhat close to that. The problem, I do think that generally speaking, that's a great example of where those are typically not hard enough for people to truly get to failure. It takes a while to really get somebody to that point. I have some clients that are, but I think dips are easier to get to failure.
Yeah.
But I go back to the same principles as used for the compound movements. I'm trying to use greatest range of motion for that joint with as much weight as possible so that I can drive some sort of a progressive overload, which is one of the other challenges with accessories, is that tends to be harder to drive incremental progressive overload. So I've reverted to a lot of rep increments instead of just adding weight.
Yeah, same.
And this is why, again, getting to failure is so important. Because that extra rep is only really effective if you were actually really close to failure last week.
Yeah, or else you waste like 4 weeks doing weights that weren't even challenging enough.
Aren't even really hard enough. Exactly.
Mhm.
So it's on the assumption that you're close to failure. And a lot of times I'll even only add a rep to like one set. A lot of times I'm going in and typing in like, okay, this week we're going to do one set of 9, one set of 9, one set of 10, or one set, whatever, other way around, 10, 9, 9. Okay, next week, let's do 10, 10, 9.
Right. Same.
So I guess going back to answer your question, what equipment do you have? How much time do you have? What muscle are we trying to work on? Okay, let's pick an exercise that you like doing and have the equipment time availability to do, and focus on moving a load through as much range of motion as possible in a controlled manner. So that's one of the things that I think helps. And I've actually gotten to, it used to be, I would just put accessories in at the end of the workout and it'd be like, yeah, knock those out in a superset. And it was just sort of like, sometimes they'd post video, most of the time they wouldn't. I've gotten to the point where I ask for almost all accessories for two reasons. I want to make sure that they're actually controlling the movement, especially the eccentric component of it, to make sure they're getting as much of a stretch reflex as possible and as much range of motion as possible. Two, I want to make sure they're not just swinging the weight through the range of motion, or, like using a lot of momentum and body weight to swing the weight. And then three, I want to see definite reduction in the speed of the movement for those last rep or two.
Or like, how shaky are their arms by the time we're at the last couple of reps here? Or how much longer do they have to take between reps to get this done?
Yeah. You see the grimace on the face, or are they just kind of like going through the motions?
Yeah, that's a good one. Like, I think of inverted rows a lot when I think of that one, because like anybody who's done a set of inverted rows knows that they get really hard by the third set towards the end. You have to change something to keep yourself moving through inverted rows. So if someone's like 3 sets of 15 inverted rows, I'm like, what are you doing? Because those are hard.
Yep, no problem.
Yeah. And never asked to take those out of the program because we all know they suck.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What are your criteria for selecting accessories?
I might look into the lifts to see if there's anything we need to kind of focus on, which comes up, I think, a lot in bench and press. And often that's going to be, all right, well, let's get some more tricep focused work in. Lower body stuff will often come from someone buying new equipment. Like,
Yeah.
well, I bought a reverse hyper, or I bought a leg curl, leg extension machine. Sometimes I've gotten some ladies who want to do some more glute work, and then I'll put in, a hip thrust. I haven't gotten that from any of my gentleman clients yet. That's a weird way to say that.
Your gentleman callers.
My male online coaching clients. And then it might be something aesthetic, like when someone is going through that phase of, I think I should do a cut, or I want to lean out. Sometimes just like, maybe you just need to get a little more jacked. So then I'll throw in arm work, lateral raises, back stuff like lat pull downs. If they're working towards chin ups and I know they're not ready to get an effective chin up workout yet, then I'll do curls, lat pull downs, banded work, inverted rows, dumbbell rows, and get those into the mix where trying to hit that muscle group, once a week.
I thought of an accessory that I've recently programmed for a client that is in that high rep category. And that is a guy who goes hunting in Alaska every year. And we've gotten progressively better at preparing him for rucking through ridiculous terrain. I mean, this is one of these hunting trips that are extreme voluntary hardship. When he gets back from these and describes them to me, opposite of fun.
This is the kind where their wife is probably like, I hope I see you again.
Yes. No, I'm not
For real.
kidding. One of the trips, they crash landed on a sandbar in this little like pontoon boat and did a 360 on the sandbar.
Oh my God.
He described sleeping in puddles of water because it's just dumping hard rain, and even though it's in the summer, it's still freezing cold on some mountain in Alaska. It's cold and wet the entire time. This isn't like going on a trail. They're out
Right.
in completely wild terrain hunting mountain goats. And they're shooting them from hundreds of yards away or whatever.
Yeah.
And then the goat will like fall off the side of the mountain and they have to go find it. So it becomes this expedition just to go capture it. So he's doing a lot of up and down with the backpack.
And weird positions.
Yeah.
So many weird positions. High rep stuff.
Yeah. So we've modified the main lifts to try to increase more range of motion, because I would say one of the joints that gets relatively less range of motion than that real life experience is the knee joint.
For sure. Yeah.
The low bar squat and the deadlift, not a ton of knee flexion. And especially that going downhill kind of thing is movement is not, getting your legs stronger helped. And he had significantly less knee pain just from having squat. But each year we try to tweak it a little bit to modify the program to be more specific to that kind of a application. So for example, we're doing more high bar squatting. We've been trying deficit deadlifts just to put him into more knee flexion. And recently, an accessory that we're experimenting with is just box step ups and step downs. So he's got one of those 3-sided boxes, and we started by working the reps up on the lowest side of the box. So he'll step up and then step down. And then we increased the height gradually over time. And then we're going to start loading it eventually as well. So he just gets pretty relatively high rep volume of that step up. And then really the step down, I think, is the one that I'm going to be curious to see if that helps on this next, as well as he's doing rucking and rowing as conditioning on the cardiovascular side, and then also preparing his legs for going up. But he lives in Ohio, so it's really hard to get the hills.
You can't hike. Yeah.
Ideally, I would have him go hiking more.
Right. Yeah. Some actual sport specific training.
No, he's in Pennsylvania, so he can't. It's just really flat, hard, and especially through the winter. So we're trying to do the best we can there.
Yeah. What's the line between an accessory that supports the goals and silly bullshit?
Yeah, like when does it become like one of those sport specific things that you're like throwing a bowling ball instead of a baseball?
Yeah.
Well, for me, it's, what's the rationale behind it? And for the step up example, it's that particularly on the downhill part, he comes back from these trips just feeling beat up. And we've tried all the other levers. Like I said, it's not like he stops squatting. This is just an accessory that he's adding at the end to see if we can build up a little bit more resilience.
Preparation.
Yeah, for that repetitive motion that he's going to be doing. It probably is a fine line between being wrong, but I would consider this an experiment. I don't have a strong opinion at this point that it's going to work. He's noticed already, though, just in going through increasing the height, that he's able to do that better than when he started. So I guess I would say, and this is true for any accessory, if you're not with maybe lateral raises being the exception to this.
Those never change. 5 pounds for life. I think I did 6.5 pounds recently.
With the exception of lateral raises, there needs to be still some sort of progressive overload component to it. And this is a common problem, I think, with accessories. People just going, oh, I'm going to do my 45-pound dumbbells and I'll just do my 3x10.
Or they're
there's not gonna
limited by the dumbbell options they have, and they haven't gotten their micro gains placed.
Shout out to micro gains, because I would agree. But that's another reason why I started doing the rep progression.
For sure. Yeah.
Which is another reason why I believe the ultra high rep stuff, just not many people are cut out to do it. Because I experimented with this for a while. I would be like, okay, well, last week you got 15. Let's do 16 next week. Let's do 17. Let's do 18. And
yeah, that seems to be different.
They hated it.
Yeah.
Like 18 reps on a legit heavy leg belt squat, for example.
I would totally do that.
They would way rather do, I would add weight and reset it to 8.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, thank God.
Yeah.
And then you build the reps back up slowly, and then it's somewhere I have found somewhere around 15 to 20 reps is when you start running into a little bit more of like a lactic acid mental wall or grip sometimes if you're not using straps.
Boredom, like you said. Yeah, it's real.
Yeah, they're just like, I don't want to do this anymore. This sucks. Because it does, it burns at a certain point, right?
Oh, yeah.
Just like that's what I don't understand is in order to do that many reps, either you are for the majority of the reps feeling nothing and just kind of like going through the motions, or for the majority of the reps, you're just suffering through pain. And it's like, neither of those options sound very good to me. So if you can get the value of it without having to do one of those two things, that's why I don't know.
Just all leads back to, if you can lift heavy with a barbell, do that for as much as you can.
As much as I've experimented with so many different exercises and options, all things seem to go back to, well, if you can do it with 3 sets of 5 and a barbell, why not just do that?
Yep.
Well, and of course, then there's other reasons like we've discussed so far, whether it be you can't get the muscle, works the way you want, or fun, or there's reasons not to do it. But if you can get the stimulus from something that takes less time and you don't have to grit your teeth through 20 reps, why not?
Yeah.
Simple, hard, effective.
That's right, folks. You heard it here first. Simple, hard, effective. Well, thank you, Andrew. And thanks everybody for listening. If you have any questions about accessories, shoot us an email. You can find me on Instagram. My Instagram is Nikki, Niki, and then a period, the period gym. Nikki in the gym. Nikki's with 1K. Andrew, where can people find you?
Andrew Barbender.
Yes, he is the barbender. He's the one. You can also email us. You can find us on barbelllogic.com on the team page. We would love to hear from you. Thanks everybody for listening. We will see you here next week. In the meantime, stay jacked. Keep those arms pumping. 8 to 12 reps. Maybe do 8 one week, then do 9. Then the next week, do 10. Have fun.
Whoa.
Bye.
Bye-bye.